Hey everyone, Ronaldo Wafferman. Wanted to show you a quick CompuShow, not really tutorial, but I guess just a, hey, this was a request type thing. But a lot of people ask me, hey Ronaldo, how do you organize your shows? I guess, either they've seen my videos or they see that my people always run everything live. They want to know everything is. It's actually very simple. Now, I have a dual layer setup, or dual screen setup for my CompuShow rig. This is what I have on my second screen, which are usually just the lights. You'll notice there's not a lot of shows. It's mostly switches. And most everything is programmed in switches. Now, there's no floods. I have the nucleus, and I've got everything that I separated by color here. I have my Spherion, which I select my color, my gobo rotation, and shutter. Very simple. No need for me to sit there and make live programs or anything like that, because I can fade in, fade out of the actual dimmer through with these with the MIDI-Con faders. And then as far as the colors and all that, again, that's what the switches are for. You'll see, for example, like, the Starball LED, UV16, which UV16 is hidden and Starball LED is hidden because I actually have a lot of the lights triggered with the flash pads on the MIDI-Con. So because I know where they are, I just need to either turn them on or off or fade in and fade out in the menu. Like this is, for example, for the UV. I don't need to access the UV because I can fade in, fade out. I can have solid, I can have strobe on or strobe flash, and that's all the functions I need. And that cleans up my screen a little bit more. And let's go ahead and move it over here, or move this off to this side, because the most important part for me is the master page. And I have this little fixtures tab here so you can kind of see what's going on. Let's kind of narrow that down. There we go. This is basically my layout of shows of lights, but not by how it's laid out, but rather by organization. So I have just like, one set of lights here, different type of lights, floods, matrix panels. I have my big giant matrix wall behind me that I do sometimes with the tripod profiles. So let's go ahead and look at what's under each different section. Now the layout is different depending on how I do it, and a lot of times I'll actually drag this to the other screen in case I need more. But of course we have solid colors right here, and that's pretty obvious. It basically is solid colors for all the floods. Now, not just the lights that I use floods, but I mean any light that does a type of flood. So up lighting, wash lighting, all that can be changed with the floods. Dimmers are very simple. These are basically overrides for the freaks, so I can make a freak strobe, but I can still fade it down if I need to without having the freak slow down as I dim it down. So those are just triggers that I made, and if you're curious about them, or the dimmers rather, there's a video that I've done on that before. Now the same thing with, actually triggers, you can ignore that because I'm not doing anything with that right now. Wedding presets, pretty obvious. It's just basically presets that I made for weddings that change in between, either using color palettes, position palettes, or even just program right on the spot. Dots presets are just basically some presets that came in built in for the dots. Macros, I don't use those often, but that's exactly what the name describes. Things like white LEDs, house lights, chases. Again, I don't need to look at those because those are already programmed in the MIDI-Con. We let muscle memory run its magic in that sense. Also, with the dimmers, going back over here, if you remember I did a video a while back on when I hit a button in the MIDI-Con, everything flashes and then shuts off. Well, that's what these are for. These automatically override that, and you'll see that it always takes priority. So as soon as I let go of that flash button, this shuts off, and it goes back to the previous show. So on the middle part here, actually, let's go here on this part. I have my... I move everything up and down, depending on the kind of setup that we're doing. But the first colors I have basically a whole bunch of color switches. And I made these color switches by using compression. Compression basically takes a bunch of buttons with the first beginning part of the name and compresses them together. And then I can right-click on those buttons and add these icons that I made on there. So I have, for example, different chases for the reds, different chases for the blues. And of course, I can control my speed and I can control my phasing. So you'll see there how that's going back and forth. And you'll kind of see the quick flash across there. If I need to change it up a bit, I can do that as well. So again, it gives me a little bit of variety in there and crams everything in one nice even spot. I also have the same thing for my Inno colors. So the exact same color chases I've done for my Inno color beams in case I'm using those. Now, the cool thing is with the flood color swaps, if you have multiple different kinds of floods or your uplights, don't forget that you can go into live, you can hit record, you can grab one, or you can grab multiple ones. Here we go. So you hit live, record, and then you can grab... sorry, forgot I'm on parallels. So you can grab different ones here, and then you can make that do a whole different color there. Give me a second. Why? There we go. So I'm going to grab those, hit record, then I choose the color. And then as I let go of it, you'll actually see that these are flashing blue and purple, and then these are flashing green and white. So again, let's say I want to get these two lights, you know, and I just want to make them solid red. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click these two right here. I'm going to hit the record button, and then I'm just going to make it red. And there you go. Now, of course, let's go over here for a second. I can add more lights if I need to this particular, you know, the different, what we call embedded inside a button, which is right there. That's another different version of it, but that's a whole different thing. Whole different thing we'll talk about later. But anyhow, I can just click on the X to erase all of them and have it reset back to normal. I have my master color, which basically grabs anything that has LED color mixing, and I can grab it right then and there. Let me shut that off the recording. There we go. So I can grab it all right then and there. Or I could just grab my flood color mixes. I have some basic flood effects. These are more complex shades. Instead of just green and white, it could be green, blue, you know, all sorts of different colors in between. And then, of course, I have flood themes that use my color palettes. And this is great for weddings or anything like that. I've kept them very simple for now, but I'll be adding more later on. My master strobe, this is very simple. I have a button that makes only my flood strobe. And why it's acting like that is just because of the way that it wants to show up. But it actually does do a strobe there. And then, of course, I have my strobe ball that makes everything strobe. If it has a shutter, this button will make it strobe. And, of course, I can speed up and slow down. I have a master shutter, which basically makes my NOs or my floods or my movers, whatever, do a shutter chase, and it does it either by speed or by BPM. And there's one that also does both, where it does all my moving heads and the floods do all sorts of crazy cool chases. So again, it allows me to really mix and match different effects here. And of course, I have my NO movements. Now my NO movements, these are for the NO color beams. And very simple. I have, you know, very different effects. Now, when it comes to the movements, I don't think people pay as much attention to that, especially if there's no haze. So for me, I'd rather have some really good made movements, and then I can choose different speed, phasing, or stage resize to make the movements a little bit differently. I can also, you know, right click, which I set up my right click so I can change different things. I can do highest stakes priority or subtract from current to create some really cool, unique effects. If I, you know, for example, if I'm going to click, if I've got a slow song coming up, right, and I want to do just the blue, and I don't know what speed the blue fade. That F means that it fades from one blue to another versus just chasing. I just right-click, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to have it kind of slow like that. I don't want it phasing. And then when I click it, it starts nice and slow. But maybe after that, I want to go into a really cool vertigo effect, right? And I'm like, okay, well, the color that I have right now is the pink one here. I'm going to do this one next. I'm going to just right click. I'm going to speed it up, and I'm going to do a phasing, whatever I need it to be, and then click it. Now everything's going to go all sorts of crazy and haywire or whatnot. Because I double click, it shuts these off, which gives me the effect that I want. So again, that's, in a nutshell, that's how I have mine organized, and it looks very confusing, but I promise you it makes sense when you use it live, especially when you combine it with the MIDI-Con. So many fun options you can do in there. But that's my CompuShow. Any questions or anything? Make sure you guys leave a comment below. Thank you all so much. God bless.